Hello. God exists. Today I will be discussing the contingency argument. This argument is one of the best arguments for God's existence. It is my personal favorite, but objectively it is second only, like in terms of explanatory power to theism. It's second only to the psychophysical harmony argument. Firstly, to understand the contingency argument, we need to define, its principles, and also God. But more importantly, God. So, what is God? Well, according to many philosophers, God is a necessary being, a perfect being, and or a foundational mind. A necessary being is one that is necessary in of itself, or its existence is always essential. A perfect being is the one that is maximally good, or one that contains all great making features or properties, so like goodness, perfection, some etc. etc. I will be discussing that later. And a foundational mind is like one who essentially grounds all of reality. All of those will be discussed. Secondly, I want to emphasize principles required in understanding the argument or any argument in general. These are the principle of explanation and the principle of possible explanation. The principle of explanation states that for any contingent concrete objects, the fact that those objects exist is explained. It suggests that the fact anything physical and contingent things must have an explanation. By explanation, I mean it shouldn't be itself be the reason for its existence, and its explanation is always required by its relations to another concrete object. These are intuitively, in the philosophical sense, for me, not like personal sense, seems to be the case, especially when it is consistently been reliable in science or any other empirical methodology. It also doesn't make sense for contingent objects to appear so suddenly, like out of nowhere, regardless if a person has observed appears so or not. There are also proofs, not proofs. I'm not talking about Alexander Proust. Sorry if that sounds like that. There are also proofs that whenever something appears, they mostly fall under the category of existence instead of non-existence. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, if an apple suddenly like drops in my hand, like that would just be classified as non-existence. It's not. That's a category error. If it doesn't appear to be the case, then everything. Oh wait, yeah. Sorry. If it doesn't appear to be the case, then everything that we see just pops into existence without rhyme or reason. I.e., another example. Sorry. If I flip a coin, I suddenly produce an elephant or a balloon. And that's why the principle of explanation is required for this argument and any argument in general. The principle of possible explanation states that anything that is contingent and concrete can and will possibly be explained rather than in of itself. The reason is because that we might put forward an explanation to something. Like, we can grasp that it is conceivable for it to be the case. This principle is supported by science, and is also consistent on how we approach things. Finally, we can now discuss the contingency argument. The contingency argument premises are: 1. There are contingent concrete beings. 2. For any concrete objects, the fact that those objects exist is possibly explained by the principle of possible explanation. That's the principle used in premise 2. Sorry. Premise 3. Sorry. That the only thing that could explain the fact that all the contingent objects exist is a necessary concrete being. So it is possible that a necessary concrete being exists. So a necessary concrete being, God, exists. So this argument suggests that everything is contingent upon a necessary concrete being, with the exception of the necessary concrete being, who is the only sufficient explanation for itself. It is the exception. The reason why is due to them having this attribute of necessity. If you don't accept the necessity property of the necessary concrete being, then everything that is contingent would be non-circular, because their explanation for why they exist require an infinite number of relations between another concrete thing, without any sufficient or possible explanation to why they appear to exist. For instance, just because you have an infinite ladder doesn't mean there is no ground that necessitates it to reach an infinite amount of distance, horizontally or vertically, depending on how you place your ladder. Yeah, that's the... assuming, that's an assumption. So this is known as causal finitism. Causal finitism states, if causal finitism is not true, then it is possible that an infinite ladder would not have a ground in order to reach an infinite distance, horizontally or vertically. 2. The infinite ladder scenario is impossible. Thus, causal finitism is true. 4. If causal finitism is true, there is an uncaused concrete being. Contingent concrete beings are not uncaused. Therefore, there is an uncaused necessary concrete being, God. Now, we are down to one question. How do we know if it is God? Well, the necessary concrete being must be non-physical and immaterial to explain why it isn't bound to contingency. I want to inform people that when I say something concrete, it is either they have multiple parts in relation to other parts or has simple parts. God is the latter. Also, theists and Christians, or particularly Christians, I guess, since I'm a Christian, but like it also applies to any theism in general. Do not ever accept divine simplicity as like God's attributes. If you say that the divine simplicity just means like God has no parts, if that were true, then like God wouldn't exist. That's the problem. Don't use divine simplicity, because you are assuming that if God has no parts, he just doesn't exist. Please don't use it. Anyways, God is the latter. So why? It is because it is the only explanation to why concrete contingent objects exist, like an apple, gravity, electromagnetism, and even the universe itself, since it requires the Big Bang, and the Big Bang also requires something, a necessary concrete being, perhaps. I also want to make further note is the Big Bang is not really the beginning of the universe. It is just an explanation of why the universe started out as a small, dense, hot temperature to something which still expands today. Those are distinct from like the beginning of the universe, which suggests that perhaps the necessary concrete being, or like anything in general in reality, anything that exists in reality is, in some sense, the beginning of it is a necessary concrete being. Lastly, it is unlimited in value. It is a being that is the most valuable in all of reality. For everything that is contingent, the necessary concrete being has to have the property to keep them intact and ensure they consistently appear so in our reality. Thus, it makes sense for this necessary concrete being to be omnipotent. And if it is omnipotent, then inductively, or I think adductively, it is certain that it is omniscient, omnipresent, omnibenevolent, and most importantly, necessary. Therefore, when I say in the beginning of the video, God exists. Thank you very much, and God bless. Oh, and also, if you want to read the transcript of this reel or video, you could check out my Substack, which not only has the transcript, but like many other concepts that you guys might be interested in. So yeah, thank you, and yeah, God bless.